Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Homeroom live stream. Today, it's just going to be me. So we're going to do another Ask Me Anything. So if you have any questions for me, literally about anything, start putting them on the message boards on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching this. And we have team members who will surface the questions to me. So please start thinking about those. But before we jump into the Ask Me Anything, I'll give my standard announcements. Reminder that Khan Academy is a not-for-profit organization, and we can only exist through donations from folks like yourself. So if you're in a position to do so, please think about going to khanacademy.org/donate and making a donation. And our last guest, where we talked about what makes folks happy, one of the things that can actually make you a happier person is giving to others. So when you donate to Khan Academy, that is going to give to many, many, many other folks. The power of their potential, of their education, is going to make you a much happier person because of it. Also like to give a shout out to several corporations who I'm guessing are also now happier corporations because they've stepped up as Khan Academy had to step up during COVID. Our costs went up, our server costs went up. We've been trying to accelerate programs, and they helped us fill this gap. But we still need more help. But special thanks to Bank of America, Google.org, AT&T, Fastly, and Novartis. Also want to remind folks about Homeroom with Sal, the podcast. It's a podcast version of what we're doing right now, edited down a little bit for podcast purposes, and it's safe to consume while you're driving or doing other things that you might need your eyes for. So check that out wherever you find your podcasts. So with that, let's get into the Ask Me Anything. And there's one that we got a little ahead of time from Dulce Castro Garcia. This was actually, I think, on the last one from Thursday, but I figure it's a good place to start. Dulce wrote, Mr. Khan, until this live stream, I didn't know who had made the platform I love working on so much. How did you get the idea to make the platform, or what inspired you? Thank you so much. I'll make sure to donate. Well, Dulce, thank you so much that you enjoy working on Khan Academy. A lot of folks talk about people having a growth mindset, and people with a growth mindset are constantly challenging themselves and pushing their boundaries. And people with a growth mindset are also disproportionately successful in life. And the fact that it sounds like you like going to Khan Academy, challenging yourself, keep pushing the boundaries of your knowledge, I think will hopefully says a lot about you, and hopefully will be a small part in you becoming an incredibly empowered person. And thanks for the willingness to donate if you're in a position to do so. In terms of where the inspiration for Khan Academy came from, it goes pretty far back. The Khan Academy immediately started getting worked on in 2004 when one of my cousins needed help. I was an analyst at a hedge fund at the time. My original background was in math and computer science, and I had worked in tech as well. But I started tutoring her. Word spread through my family. Free tutoring was going on. I soon found myself tutoring 10, 15 cousins around the country. I started writing software for them, because I saw a common pattern is that they all had gaps in their knowledge. And I wanted some ways for them to practice and fill in those gaps. And for me as their teacher or their tutor, to monitor what they were doing, so that when we got on the phone, we could dig a little bit deeper. And that was the first Khan Academy, that exercise platform I wrote for them. And it actually still is the core of Khan Academy, this notion to be able to practice and get as much feedback as you need. And then it was a friend in 2006 who suggested that I make videos to supplement the exercise portion of Khan Academy and upload them onto YouTube. I thought it was a horrible idea. I told him YouTube is for cats playing piano, not serious mathematics. But I got over the idea that it wasn't my idea, and I gave it a shot. And my cousins famously told me they like me better on YouTube than in person. Take that how you will. What they were saying is that they really appreciate having an on-demand version, an infinitely repeatable version of their cousin that they could watch in the middle of the night. No judgment, but they still enjoyed having the phone calls with me. And then became clear people who are not my cousins were using this resource, and not just the software, but the videos as well. By 2009, I had set up Khan Academy as a not-for-profit organization. To be clear what a not-for-profit is, no one owns a not-for-profit. I don't own Khan Academy. You own as much of Khan Academy as I own of Khan Academy. None of us own it. It's really for society. But I set it up as a not-for-profit, and I said, the social return on investment on this, the social impact could be through the roof. I set it up with the mission of free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And even though at that time there were about 50 or 100,000 folks using it, I imagined, and I was operating out of the same closet where I am now, that maybe one day it could be millions, 10 millions, hundreds of millions, billions of folks. And so I quit my day job, and tried to find philanthropic funding for it. And that first year was a very tough year. I think anytime you do anything entrepreneurial, you almost have to have that delusional optimism, assume that people are going to step up and realize what you think you realize. But it always takes a little bit more time than you suspect. And so it was actually very, very stressful. That 2009, our first child had just been born, our expenses went up. My wife was still in training to be a physician, so it was hard. But as we got kind of month 9, month 10, then some philanthropists started to come out of the woodwork. And then by that fall, some major foundations, Google.org, the Gates Foundation, stepped up for us to become a real organization. So that was really the genesis of Khan Academy, and it's been an ongoing ride ever since. And it's all because of support from both the large foundations and corporations and folks like yourself that make this possible. Because right now we're only really throttled back by how much resources we can apply to this problem that is affects all of humanity. But thanks for that question, Dulce, I think was your name. And then let's see, YouTube, Anuj Bhagwan. You can be a billionaire, but you're doing free. But what you are doing free. What is your source of energy, Anuj? Well, I guess you're making allusion to, like, maybe if Khan Academy was for profit, I would own some of it and it could go public and maybe be worth billions. Maybe. I did the thought experiment back when I was deciding whether to make Khan Academy for profit or nonprofit. And I live in Silicon Valley. And so there were some venture capitalists who were reaching out at the time and saying, hey, our kids use Khan Academy. We think you're onto something. We'll write a quick check for you right now. You can quit your job, start doing it. And we think this could be a really successful ed tech for-profit company. And it was tempting because I could immediately work on it. Maybe if it's successful, I could be a billionaire, which, I could dress better, etc. But then when I really thought about, what would I do with $1 billion? Yes, I would probably maybe dress a little bit better. I probably wouldn't even dress any better. I would, I have everything I need. Even back then, I kind of had everything I need. I have a wonderful family, a smart, beautiful, amazing, intelligent wife. I have now, at the time I had one son, but now I have 2 sons and a daughter. They're incredibly fun and, give me incredible energy and contentment. And, if you have those things and if you have enough resources to pay your mortgage, go on vacations every now and then, go to a restaurant every now and then, so you're not, struggling financially, which, growing up, I grew, my mom raised us by ourselves and she worked a lot of minimum wage jobs. So I know how hard it is when you struggle financially. But if you're not struggling financially, if you have your base necessities, we have 2 Hondas, what else could I want? And Honda doesn't even pay me. I just keep buying Hondas. I'm not trying to be some type of social media influencer. I've just always been kind of a fan of Hondas. They haven't let me down. But I was like, what would I do with more money? I would probably just donate it all to an effort like Khan Academy. And so why wait for that? Just do it in reverse. Do the philanthropy in reverse. Just go straight to the not-for-profit and then try to find other folks who are aligned to help fund it. And, I do collect a salary from it. Everyone at Khan Academy, we're paid to do what we do. But obviously we're not paid in stock. We're not, gazillionaires and billionaires and all of that. But I'm very happy with that trade-off personally in life. We had Francis Ford Coppola on several months ago, and he brought up this term called, in life, a lot of people are trying to become millionaires, or millionaires are trying to become billionaires, but he coined a new term called sufficientaire. And that's when you have enough. And if you think about, if in your mind you're a sufficientaire, you're actually the wealthiest of all. Because I know people who are probably worth $1 billion who want to be worth $2 billion, and they're kind of waking up in the middle of the night, like, how am I going to make that next billion? But if you're a sufficientaire, then you have enough. And I consider myself a sufficientaire. I have hopefully reasonable financial security, have all what I need. And I get to work on a mission that I care about. I get to work with incredible people. I get to do goofy things like these AMAs every now and then as part of my job. It's intellectually challenging. So, what else could I ask for? So I have no regrets at all. So let's see, from YouTube, Kade Heppelman says, what makes you most proud of with Khan Academy? When I meet folks, either virtually or when I meet them in person, and they say that it's had an impact on their life. I've gone through airport security, and the person who's walking me into the scanner all of a sudden says, "Hey, you look familiar." And then they hear me talk. They're like, you sound a lot like that Khan Academy guy. And I'm like, well, I am the Khan Academy guy. And and then they'll start talking about, how it helped them, how it got them through high school or how it got them through college. And it makes, it feels really good to have that type of feedback, to hear those stories when you're doing an otherwise not pleasant thing like trying to check into airport security. So that generally, and we get letters all of the time, and that really is what gives me a lot of energy and gives me a lot of satisfaction. And that, I tell this to the Khan Academy team all the time. These are the stories we hear about, but we know that there's tens of millions of folks on the platform. So, that there's literally stadiums full of people right now who are learning, who are tapping into their potential because of Khan Academy that might not have otherwise been able to. And, for me, I just think about all of that human potential that is growing and growing and growing. I remember reading a story about Warren Buffett. This was well before I started Khan Academy, but they asked him about his investment in Gillette, which makes shaving razors. And he says, I sleep very well at night, just imagining all the hair growing on all the men's faces around the world. And that's just going to drive the profits of Gillette. Well, my analog is I go to sleep and I just imagine all of the people who are not their hair is growing, but their intellect is growing. Their neurons are connecting because of Khan Academy. And hopefully their self-esteem is growing because they're able to tap into their potential. And, I don't think there's anything more exciting than that. And selfishly, all of you who are growing intellectually and your self-esteem and your confidence is growing, you're going to do amazing things. Many of those things are going to benefit all of us, including me. So it'll all come back. One of y'all are going to find a cure for some disease, or, solve climate change or part of it, or, write the next great novel. And hopefully if Khan Academy plays a little small part of it, that'd be incredible. Let's see, from Facebook, Patrick Breslin, how can we improve the online learning classroom experience? Ideas and improvements in 2020 and beyond. Well, there's some high level things that actually don't need technology. I think the interactive live video conference is crucial, especially if you're doing distance learning. Now, to be clear, I don't think distance learning is optimal. 100% distance learning is not optimal for most people, including for myself. You need to be in a classroom, interact with people, see body language. That stuff is super powerful. But obviously during COVID, we have to do distance learning. And then beyond COVID, there could be spaces for it where it gives you access to courses that might not be available in your school or connected to students who you might not otherwise be able to connect with. But whenever you're doing anything distance, especially video conference, you got to make it as interactive as possible. If I just lecture to y'all right now without looking at your questions, it might as well be a video. And ideally, if we're all really live on a video conference, I should be asking y'all questions and seeing your responses, putting you into breakout sessions, being creative on the use of time. Instead of 60 minutes with 30 kids, why not six 10-minute sessions with 5 kids each, so you can get a little bit more personalization. Break it up every now and then with just fun activities. Close your eyes and draw an elephant and then share it with everyone, maybe in a breakout session. Those are the types of things that when we see are done well, make it really engaging. And frankly, everything I just said are also good practices in a physical classroom. Make it as interactive as possible, human to human. From YouTube, Hari Aburu says, how did you manage to upload millions of videos helping millions of people? Well, Hari, to be clear, Khan Academy is much more than just me. And I haven't uploaded millions of videos. Personally, I have made thousands of videos. I think it's probably about 6,000 or 7,000 at this point. And, it seems like a lot, but when you look at how many days in the year there are, times I've been making videos for about 14 years now. You can get several thousand, if you think about, if you say roughly over 10 years, 7,000 videos. I've been doing it for a little bit more than 10 years. You're looking at about 700 videos a year. If you think I've been doing it for about 12, 13, 14 years, it's a little bit lower, maybe 500, 600 videos a year. And so that's averaging about, there's about 250 work days. So I'm averaging about 2 to 5 videos per workday. And I still make videos. I made one this morning. I still haven't uploaded yet. It's coming. It's Simpson's diversity index in biology of how do you quantify diversity in a population. Let's see. So Hari asks another question. What do you think is the hardest topic in mathematics? What I found is any topic in mathematics, it can sometimes seem hard at first because it's kind of stretching your thinking. It's making you visualize things in a different way, or it might even be things that you find trouble visualizing. Like, I remember the first time, in linear algebra, you start generalizing this notion of two-dimensional, three-dimensional, and then you go to n space, that you can have an arbitrary number of dimensions. And then you can essentially do linear algebra within those arbitrary number of dimensions, and mathematically you can come up with some really interesting conclusions about things or insights about things. And at first, I remember thinking, how do I think beyond 3 dimensions? I mean, maybe we can think in 4 dimensions if you include time. But the more you get familiar with it, your brain, it is true, the human brain cannot really visualize 4 dimensions, or definitely not 5 dimensions. But you can start to think about how it works. And actually the math can help you think about what happens, what would it be like to experience if we had 4 spatial dimensions or 5 spatial dimensions or things like that. So, I think, and there's other topics in mathematics that can be very abstract. It might seem very esoteric, but what I found is the more in any subject, not just math, that you really apply yourself to it, you allow your subconscious to ponder a little bit, give yourself some time and space. At some point, those connections are going to happen. And I'm actually convinced anything that is understandable by any other human being is actually understandable by any other human being, just given enough time. If you go back 1,000 years, things like algebra were considered like super advanced, like only the elite of the elite mathematicians would, Al-Khwarizmi famously is the one who really invented algebra, and algebra is, it's algebra. It comes from Arabic, and this was kind of in the kind of the golden age of kind of Islamic mathematics. I think it coincides with the famous library in Baghdad. So back then, for much of the world, this was like super advanced stuff. I think this was in the 11th or 12th century. But you fast forward today, we expect, pretty much, you start learning algebra in 6th grade, 11 or 12 years old, and you really are supposed to master algebra, or at least the core of it, by the time you're in 9th or 10th grade. So I think, even things like tensor analysis or topology, or, I could come up with some of these abstract things. I think over time, they're going to become more and more common for more and more people to really understand these things. So from YouTube, Sudhir Yadav says, how could I balance my life between monthly exams and what I really want to do in life? Good question. And I would say, the key is balance. No matter what stage of life you're at, whether you're a student and you have to take your exams and study for them, or whether you're working and you have some passions you want to work on, I think if you really determine yourself, you say, look, I am going to set aside X hours a day. Maybe it's only an hour a day, 2 hours, or maybe it's only 3 hours on the weekend to do this thing I care about. You should be able to do it. There's a lot of stuff we do when we're procrastinating, not efficient use of time, that when we really think about it and, reflect on it, we're like, it really doesn't make us feel good. Let me focus that energy on the stuff that I really want to work on. And, I say this because Khan Academy wouldn't exist. Y'all heard the story of how it started. If I said, I'm a hedge fund analyst, that's all I'm going to do. My cousin needs help, but I'm going to ignore her. Khan Academy exists because I had I said, look, this is important to me. I'm interested in tutoring. I want to help my cousin, and I want to write software. I want to help them. And I'm curious about the broader problem of education. Let me carve out some time for this. And, when you do that, you think it might affect your day job, but in a lot of ways it doesn't, and it actually makes you better at your day job, because then when you go to your day job, you're more energized, recharged, and you're used to thinking in kind of different ways. So even now, there's a million things I want to get done with Khan Academy, and when Friday afternoon or evening comes around, I'm like, oh, maybe I should just work through the weekend and crank that stuff out. But I remind myself that if I do that, I'm just going to deplete myself and actually probably be less effective in my role at Khan Academy, and that I should invest that time, be present for my own needs, for my wife's needs, for my children's needs, so that one, it's for them, but also for myself. I think no one on their deathbed wishes that they had worked for their job a little bit harder. everyone on their deathbed, I think, or a lot of folks when on their deathbed, when you're in your, hopefully a long time from now, they say, oh, I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I invested more in my passions. I wish when my kids were young, I really appreciated them. I look at videos now of, my kids are 11, 9, and 6. And I look at videos from even 4 or 5 years ago when they were younger, and I was like, man, they were these little chunky monkeys. How come I didn't squeeze them all day? And then I remember how tiring it was as well. So I was probably just tired. But I remind myself that in 5 years, when I see videos of my own kids today, I'm going to, oh, look how cute and adorable they were. And they were so fun and curious. How come you ignored them when you were trying to write that, memo to a whatever. And so I just remind myself that all the time. It's all about balance and making, and really prioritizing your inner self, your family, and your friendships, so that they don't get lost. And it's not going to hurt, your other things you have to do, whether it's academics or a job. So let's see. YouTube, Susana Garcia Dominguez. I don't want to have favorite question askers, but Susana has consistently asked some very good questions. So not to make all of y'all feel bad. I haven't seen the question she's going to ask to see. Hello, Sal. Thank you for having Homeroom today. I was wondering about MIT. Do they have a big endowment? What scholarships are best to apply for? What is the best way to fund MIT? I'm assuming fund as a student if you want to go, because MIT is a reasonably wealthy university. They have I don't know what their endowment is today, but it's in the billions of dollars. But they do great things. So if anyone's thinking about funding MIT, they do some incredible research. So I'm a big fan. That's where I went to college. I'm guessing that's why Suzanne is asking me about that. But what scholarships are the best to apply for? What is the best way to fund? I'm assuming going to MIT. So, when I was in high school, my mom didn't make a lot of money. I think she was making, $5 an hour, which even in, the 1990s was not a lot of money. It was minimum wage. And my older sister actually applied to Brown University, which is another very good university, Ivy League university. And I remember when she was applying, I was like, even if you get in, how are we can't afford going there. At the time, I think Brown's tuition was $20,000 a year, which was more than my mother made in a year. And then room and board would have been another $10,000 a year. So back then it would have been about $30,000 a year. Now these places are $50,000, $60,000 a year in some cases. And then my sister told me, no, Sal, there's this thing called financial aid. And if you get into some of these universities, not all universities have them, but universities like Brown, universities like MIT that have reasonable size endowments, they, first of all, try to be need blind, or I think they are need blind when they look at an applicant. So they're not looking at you, whether you're going to be able to pay or not. And then if you get admitted, they try to make it so that you can pay. And so when I was, my sister was able to, she had a good bit of loans, but then she also had a lot of grants from school, and then she was able to go. And so that made me realize, oh wait, maybe I could also think about, because it was always my dream when I was young to go to MIT. A little bit arbitrary. I remember when I was 7 years old, my uncle, who was in his 20s at the time at the University of New Orleans, he was a college student, and he was doing his calculus homework. And I was like, what is this? He's like, this is calculus. I'm like, what is calculus? And he's like, well, it's a little complicated. I was like, explain it to me. And then he explains, and he's like, I was like, why do you need to learn calculus? He's like, well, I want to become an engineer, and then I'll be able to do X, Y, and Z, make things. And I said, then I want to become an engineer. And then he said, then you should go to MIT. And he doesn't remember saying that, but I remember saying, okay, I will go to MIT. I didn't know what it stood for. I didn't know where it was, but something clicked in my brain at 7 years old. And when I saw that my sister kind of pioneered that, like, oh, there's this thing called financial aid, that gave me the confidence to apply. And even that, I realized at the time, was a little delusional. No one in my high school had ever gone to MIT, and they only, were accepting at the time 5 or 6 people from the state of Louisiana. And I did not go to one of those fancy schools. But somehow I got in, and they gave me I thought, a very generous financial aid package. So I did have debt when, I had like $30,000 of debt when I graduated, but for the most part, all the contribution came from me and my work study, and my mom didn't have to contribute much. And my understanding now, a lot of these schools, if your family makes, I believe it's below $75,000 a year, it's essentially free. And I think in some cases, if your family makes below $125,000 or $150,000 a year, it's still heavily, heavily subsidized. So any of y'all thinking about going, and it's not just MIT or Brown, there's a lot of universities, look into it, that give need blind that need blind admissions and give very generous financial aid. So don't let your family's finances narrow the aperture of where you might want to go to college. Let's see, from Facebook, Maya Campbell. If you weren't leading Khan Academy, what do you think you'd be doing instead? So there's a bunch of projects that I think in the education space generally I've always been interested in. The stuff we're doing at Khan Academy. Some of y'all know I've been working on this project at schoolhouse.world. Very complementary to Khan Academy around peer-to-peer tutoring, although I view that as all part of the same broader mission, ways for students to know what they know so that they can prove it, college, for things like college admissions. University of Chicago just announced a couple of weeks ago that they were going to use these schoolhouse.world certifications for admission cycle this year. So I think I'd be drawn. Even when I was working at the hedge fund, I was saying, I'll start a school one day if I'm able to make enough money in the hedge fund, because I always thought it would be fun to be a Dumbledore type figure. So I think I would be doing something in education eventually. If you're saying if I wasn't working in education at all, what would I be doing? Maybe I would have stayed in the hedge fund world to some degree and tried to become. But even then, I would have viewed that as a means to an end. I think my biggest interests are, my general interest is in human potential. And so that's why I'm so interested in education. And then, a more recent passion that I've really been developing, y'all have heard me talk about it on this live stream, is just kind of going on an inward journey, like understanding who we are as sentient beings. And so that's why I've been meditating a lot. I've been actually investing time to get to know my friends better. We meet on Sundays and we have these, now we do it on Zoom, where we have these conversations about, what does it mean to be a good person, and what's perception versus reality, and things like that. So maybe I would have become some type of, community builder type person. Who knows? I also like, on the side, I think I'm always drawn to kind of real estate. Maybe I would have been some type of home fixer upper. There's something very tangible about that. That's just a random other interest that I might have had. A lot of my friends know, anyone who I know who wants to buy a house, they turn to me right now. I'm like their shadow real estate broker, because it's just kind of a fun thing that I like to do when I'm procrastinating. So Fataha Baber is asking from YouTube, how do I learn how to teach? Well, the best way to learn anything is to keep doing it, getting feedback, and really processing that feedback. My general, if I were to give, I haven't thought a lot about this, but step one, learn the material really, really well yourself. Not only so that it's really intuitive for you, but you're excited about it. Because if you don't have excitement, and if it's not intuitive to you, it's going to be very hard to convey the excitement and the intuition to someone else. So that's step one. The second thing is, try to build the empathy of really putting yourself in the mind of the person you're trying to explain to. Don't try to force the knowledge into them. Cater to their needs. Be as empathetic as possible. Be as patient as possible. Try to meet them where they are, and just be conversational. Don't talk down, don't talk above them. Just say, look, we're just two souls trying to understand this. I just happen to know it already, and let's see how I can help you. And I think if you have that kind of relaxed, but still passionate and very intuitive angle on something, people are going to really enjoy, learning with you and going on a learning adventure. That's my gut sense. Time's going by fast. Let me do a couple more questions. Which skill do you think is the most useful for the future? This is from Kuram Amir Mazar from Facebook. The meta skill is the ability to learn things. The one thing we know about the next century is that the rate of change is only going to accelerate. There's these famous stats. I don't know how they come up with it, that the majority of the jobs that all of y'all are going to have 10, 20, 30 years from now don't exist yet today. So we don't even know what those jobs are. And so the real skill you need to learn is how do you pull knowledge? And the beauty is right now on the internet through Khan Academy and other things, the knowledge is all there. There's a million ways to learn the skills. And so you just have to get good at doing it. So when you're on Khan Academy, yes, you can learn to factor a polynomial, and you can learn about photosynthesis, and you can learn about the American Revolution. And that's all important content to learn and skills to learn. But that meta skill of learning at your own time and space and using tools at your disposal to do so, that's really an incredible skill. And based on the last question, I think the ability to teach others is an incredibly valuable skill. not just for becoming a teacher. If you think about what a good manager does in a corporation, they're good supporters and teachers and mentors of other people. That's what, you need to communicate when you teach. You need to empathize when you teach. You need to inspire when you teach. And if you think about it, those three things are completely synonymous with leadership or any type of entrepreneurship as well. So I would say the ability to teach and the ability to learn new things. Let's see. One more question, or maybe I'll do two real fast. YouTube, MMBL, they say Khan Academy is a great area for SAT prep. I really need to raise my score 200 points or more. What do you advise me to do? If you go on Khan Academy, use the official SAT practice, which we have in partnership with the College Board, and you put in, I don't know when you plan on taking the SAT. I'm guessing you might be a sophomore or junior. It's a little late now if you're applying for college right now, but maybe you are. Don't stress. But I would put in 20, 30 minutes a day, maybe 4 or 5 days a week. And, we actually have done research. If you follow the recommendations on the official SAT practice, the stuff that the software is saying you need to work on, you really focus on leveling up your skills. So, to kind of higher and higher levels on it. And you once, and every now and then you take full length practice tests in as realistic format as possible. We see in the data that that's really going to drive a lot of growth. And especially if you have some time before your SAT and you just make a habit, 20, 30 minutes a day, follow the recommendations, work on what you need to work on, take those full length practice tests. I think in a few months, you're going to see pretty noticeable gains. And if you have even more than a few months, I actually feel pretty confident you'll be able to, reach your goals. Maybe it'll happen sooner. And then we're all over time. This one YouTube, Atin Mera says, how do you have so much depth of knowledge in most domains? It seems to be quite extraordinary for a single person to do. Well, I appreciate that you feel that I have this, this depth. And look, that is one of the things why I feel lucky to have this job, that I get to exercise that depth in many domains and then communicate it to other folks. But, I think we're all just curious beings in this thing we call life, in this universe that we're trying to understand. And almost all knowledge is just trying to make sense of who we are and what the universe is all about. And what I've found is if you can draw connections in one domain, it translates into other domains more than you might suspect. I think in a traditional school system, we silo the subject so much that you don't realize that, ways of learning and ways of connection in your brain are not as siloed as you think. It's not like your brain has like a math section and then separately a physics section and then separately an art section. These neurons are all jumbled together. And so for me, it's very fun to ponder things, to learn things, to be able to communicate things. And I think if you just have the mindset for yourself, like, I'm just going to keep learning and I'm just a curious person and I too want to learn everything. I think when you're sitting, in your mid 40s on a live stream and your beard is graying a little bit, people will be sending you questions like you just sent me. So thanks everyone for this. It's always super fun. These Ask Me Anythings. A couple of announcements tomorrow, October 22nd. I don't know what day is today. Is today that's day after tomorrow. We're going to have a motivation webinar from Kristen DeSherbo, our Chief Learning Officer. And I highly recommend this. Kristen is great. She is an expert on all things learning, and she is also very engaging herself. So encourage parents to check out this webinar on how to motivate middle and high school kids during distance learning. Also want to remind folks that tomorrow we're going to have Pedro Noguera, the Dean of the University of Southern California's Rossier School of Education. And so start thinking of questions for Dean Noguera. That's going to be a great conversation. So everyone, thanks for joining. These Ask Me Anythings are always fun, and I will see you tomorrow. Onward.